Are you kidding me? Why are you driving a tractor down my road? Hello, my name is Trent. I'm the Weft Right. Welcome to my front porch here in the beautiful mountains of Western North Carolina. It's not the most beautiful day. It's kind of peaceful, but it's very, very humid. But however, it's cool, which is nice and refreshing. I've had a lot of requests for this video. It's a long draw video, and I want to get right into it. First of all, what is long draw? Well, you may have heard of short forward draft or backwards draft or other methods of spinning a worsted yarn. A long draw is one of the ways to spin a woolen yarn. And don't be confused by the terms draft and draw. They're etymologically related. So just like you can draft plans for a building, you can also draw plans for a building. That would be a similar use. Or you can draw water from a well, or you can draft beer from a barrel. It's all the same. The main difference between a worsted yarn and a woolen yarn is the fact that during the drafting process, you let the twist get into the fiber itself. So with a worsted yarn, first of all, you're going to have a prep that is worsted, which is really important. So that means the fibers are all aligned. But even with a woolen yarn like a roving, you can do what is essentially a worsted spin. And that means that as you are pulling fiber forward, you're smoothing it down as you bring it back. So essentially you're crushing all the air out of it. Whereas in a woolen spin, we're allowing the twist to get into the fiber and jumble it all up, and it allows for an airier and more fluffy, loftier yarn that should be a little bit softer as well. But here are some downsides. It is a little more drapey. It is slightly more inconsistent, though in the plying it gets more consistent. And it also pills a little bit more than a worsted yarn. But in my experience, both worsted and woolen yarns pill. So it's just something you're going to have to deal with, I think, on any sweater, whether that sweater is handmade or store-bought. Now, if you're looking for a really drapey, tight yarn that would be great for using on a loom, then I would definitely recommend a worsted yarn. But for knitting, I love a woolen yarn. It's so much softer and fluffier. That being said, I tend to use my yarns in a knitting machine. I'm not much of a hand knitter. And the knitting machine does need a little extra twist in the yarn to make sure that it goes through smoothly and that it won't break down, because it's under higher tension than it would be if you were knitting by hand. So the way that I get around that is I spin a woolen yarn so it's nice and soft, but I spin it with more twist. So I'm spinning a higher twist yarn, and I'm also spinning a fairly fine yarn because I don't have a bulky knitting machine. I only have standard gauge and a mid gauge machine. So I need a yarn that's a little bit thinner. So in this tutorial in specific, I'm going to teach you how to spin a relatively thin yarn with long draw. And it's specifically supported long draw. And I know there are lots of terms to get in your head, but the difference is when I'm doing long draw in the traditional manner, I'm doing it with one hand. And if you've watched any of my cotton spinning videos or the videos I have spinning on my small spindle wheel, you'll know what unsupported long draw is. I don't need to use both hands for it. Supported long draw, we're going to use our usually non-dominant hand to help pull out and control the twist as it's going in to the fiber supply itself. This is a good time to talk about the fiber supply. The important thing you need to remember is that if you're learning how to long draw, then you want to work with a roving and not a top. If you do not understand the difference, I'll show some pictures here, but a roving is going to have a jumbled up but still slightly organized amount of fiber in it, whereas the top, everything's going to be smooth and usually shiny because it's also been pressed and stretched. If you're wanting to work on your long draw and you absolutely do not have any woolen prep yarn, any roving, or any yarn that you're going to be using off of a bat or off of Rolags, which is another traditional way to spin yarn, then you can use top. But what I would recommend is two things. I would recommend, if you can, recarding it into Rolags, or using a blending board to cart it into rollags. I would recommend steaming it to revive the crimp, and then I would recommend spinning it over the fold. So you want to look up other videos about spinning it over the fold, because I'm going to be using roving in today's demonstration. But having the right fiber prep is really going to prep you for spinning a good woolen yarn. You can spin a woolen yarn on any wheel. Today I'm going to be using a very generic wheel, the Ashford Traditional. It's a wheel that a lot of people have. It's been made for a very long time and they're very reliable. Because I'm going to be spinning a fairly fine yarn, I'm going to be spinning on my smallest ratio. And that means that I'm going to get a lot more twist in the yarn. If you're trying to spin a thicker yarn, which I personally find harder while learning to long draw, then I would recommend you go up a whirl size or a ratio size. Another concern that people have when they're first learning how to long draw is the fact that the yarn feels like it's being pulled out of your hand. And that's all due to tension. I really love the fine tension control you have on a Scotch tension wheel, but you can use other types of wheels as well. I mean, the oldest type of flyer wheel is definitely the double drive wheel, and people have been spinning long draw traditionally on the double drive wheel for a very long time. The double drive wheel was originally designed for flax, but people very quickly started to use it for wool and for long draw spinning when they had gotten rid of their old walking wheels. So it's very possible on all the different tensioning devices. One thing though, because I'm trying to spin a fine yarn and I'm starting on an empty bobbin, is I like to cross lace my flyer. So to do that, the first thing you're going to need is your leader. So for a leader, I have this beautiful thread or yarn, which is half cotton and half wool. So it grabs onto any fiber that I'm spinning really, really well. And I like to use about 2 yards of the leader thread. So let's get a close-up now of how to cross-lace your flyer. First of all, I'm going to tie an overhand knot in my yarn. Then I'm going to put that knotted end under my bobbin and bring the looped end through that. Oh, I got it caught. There we go. And then what I do, so I don't have to use tape or anything, is I'll take another end, draw it under, and pull it through again. And that gives a really nice, secure way to start your yarn. And then for the cross lacing, because I usually start my yarn in the middle, I don't know why, I'll go in my middle hook, and then on my other side, I'll go in my middle hook. Now my flyer is cross-laced. Cross-lacing reduces the amount of tension that you are going to be pulling on with your yarn. So as well as relaxing my tension spring as much as I can, I also am reducing the tension even more by cross-lacing. So let's thread my orifice and get started. All right, I'm going to start my wheel spinning. I'm going to be building up twists, and I'm going to be testing the tension. So that's still a little tight for what I want. So I'm going to be loosening up my tension even more. And that means that my spring is not even extended. It's just the weight of the brake band. Now I can pull out a little easier. That's what I want. And this is one of the reasons that I use a really long leader, because I like to play around a lot with my tension before I get started. Now I have a lot of tension built up in my yarn, so I'm going to clip it right here. You could also put it over one of your knobs. So I've taken a short piece of roving here. The fibers are fairly short as well. It's very hard to spin long staple wool, so I would recommend, if you can, spin a short staple wool with some crimp. All right, let's get started. I'm going to open up my twisted leader. stick some fiber through. And then I'm going to just start out with a short forward draw, just like most people are taught. And that way I'm nice and secure. Then I'm going to actually start the long draw itself. Just like any kind of spinning, getting started is usually the hardest part. So what I'm going to do first is, because I've built up a lot of twist in my leader, I'm going to practice my long draw now. I'm going to simply pull on my fiber source and let the yarn slip in. Don't worry about the thickness. Don't worry about the quality of the yarn you're spinning yet. Just practice pulling backwards. All right, now I've got a nice chunky ugly yarn. I'm going to start my wheel. Let that draw in. And some people grab this way. I personally grab on the top. Now, you may notice I have way too much twist in this yarn to draft effectively. So I'm going to continue drawing out. I'm going to untwist a little bit and draw out my yarn. It's not a pretty process, but it's a great way to learn. You'll notice that I can release and the finer yarn starts to form. I'm letting that twist move up into my fiber supply. All right. So at this point, I should be able to start drafting my yarn as fine as I want, because I've built up plenty of twist. When I support my long draw, a lot of people hold their hand up like this. This unfortunately puts a lot of strain on my wrist right here. So I actually control my yarn with a downward hand motion. And it's a little harder for you to see what I'm doing with that. But essentially what's going to happen is twist is going to build up in this area of the yarn. And I'm going to be able to, even without pinching, I'm going to be able to keep it there and then slowly allow it to build up in the back part of the yarn that's closer to the fiber supply. So let's try that now. I'm gonna spin, and notice I've got a little bit of a slub, so I'm gonna let a little twist in there, then I'm gonna let it come out. Dealing with slubs is something that people often ask about when spinning a long draw, because it's easier to get slubs. And you can just stop. Remember, your wheel is not in control of you. You can stop it whenever you like. You can untwist and pull out slubs. Now, this is not very efficient, and when you're trying to spin quickly, it's not the best way to do it, but it is a way. So I'm going to show you some other techniques as the problems arise. So we've already spun a little bit of yarn. It's sloppy, slubby, bigger than what I want, but that's fine. So I'm going to take my wool on top of my wool, start to draft a little bit, and there's my join. So I'm going to start my wheel up again. Now I've got a high twist ratio, so I got to pull back fairly quickly and then let that yarn build up some twist and push it in. As I said, I'm building a thin, high twist yarn. As I pull back, I'm allowing twist in slowly with my non-dominant hand as my dominant hand is pulling back. Now, a part of learning long draw is your thread breaking. Don't worry about it. It'll draft apart sometimes. But once you get the right amount of twist going in, which takes a bit after you first start, you're going to start getting a more consistent yarn. Now notice I can pull a little bit to get the slubs out. What's happening is the yarn twist we'll go to the thinnest part of the yarn first and leave the bulky parts a little less twisted. So if I want to get rid of a slub, I can do it now or I can do it in the plying, but I can simply roll that thicker area in my hand, which is essentially making the diameter a little bit smaller. And that's adding extra twist. Okay, I got some vegetable matter here. I'm going to stop my wheel. I could do it without, but because I'm teaching, I want to do things nice and slow. So I've already got plenty of twist built up here, so I can practice once again. And this is something you can do too, is once you've got twist built up into your yarn, simply pull, and that has effectively reduced the amount of twist in that section of yarn. If I let go with my non-dominant hand, my supporting hand, that's going to add the twist back and distribute it all the way through. You notice I have a slub there. Because I'm working with a short fiber that's also woolen prep, I'm able to just pull that apart and let that retwist. So now I've let go a lot of the twist that I need in that section of the yarn, so I've got to add some back now. So at this point, I'm not even really pinching with my supporting hand. I'm just letting it go. I've developed some slubs. I'm going to roll those in my hands, and that's going to get rid of the slub. And that's really a big secret to doing long draw. Whenever I'm joining, I like to make sure that I have plenty of twist in my yarn so that I can simply lay the twisted yarn over top and it'll grab on itself to make a really easy join because it's a woolen prep. I'm also using my two hands in opposition to each other to test the strength of the yarn that I'm spinning. So I can pull a little bit to make sure I've got enough twist in the yarn. I don't there, so I'm letting some more in, and there we go. So that's how I check to make sure my yarn is secure enough. Now this prep has some sari silk in it, so I know that I'm going to have some slubs no matter what. But you got to kind of let go. There we go. I broke my yarn, and what happened that time is I let a section get a little too thin. So now what we're going to do is find our yarn end. It's probably going to be hard to do because it was under twisted in that section. There we go. And we are going to pull out a good bit of it, and we're going to cross lace again. So I'm going to go from one side to the other. And pull it through. Oop, got it caught under my drive band. That's actually never happened to me before. Once again, make sure there's plenty of twist in your yarn before you try to join. And then let the yarn just catch. Pinch there to get some more twist in it. And then you can start drafting backwards again. All my support hand is doing is being like a gate to add and subtract twist. Because as I pull back, the twist is lessening in this back part of the yarn. If I'm not drafting enough, I need to let more twist in. So essentially, if my yarn is getting too thin, I let go with my support hand and let more twist enter the yarn. If I'm getting slubs, I need to pull back faster. Then I can stop if I want to. Remember, you can stop at any time, untwist, and pull those slubs apart if they're really big. If the slub is bigger than the staple length of your fiber, then you can always draft it out. So now I can add some more twist to that area I just de-slubbed. If it is a slub that is smaller than the staple length of your fiber, then that's when the rolling in between your fingers is really the key. Now, I will fully admit it takes me a little while before I get the hang of doing this again. Oop. Now that I've built up a little bit on that section, my tension is a little too low, so I'm going to gently increase it, and I'm going to move my hooks. I'm going to move it toward me. Balancing your tension is one of the hardest parts about learning how to long draw. And that's why I really like cross-lacing the flyer. You'll notice I'm pinching off the yarn with my ring finger and my middle finger so that I'm preventing twist from getting up into the fiber supply. All right, so I put a little extra twist in before I do my join. I lay the yarn over the fiber, and then I can actually let go, and that's automatically going to start the join. Start my wheel going. The longer you draft out, the more twist you're going to need to put in that yarn, because the twist is being distributed across that whole area. And once again, if your yarn is coming out thinner than you would like, you need to let in more twist, because that's going to pull more of the fiber out of the fiber supply. I am not holding the fiber supply really tightly. I'm letting it slip out of my hands. That's something that's really important, and it's different from when you're doing your short forward draw. You really want to let the fiber slide. All right, I'm going to try to get a close-up of my drafting hand. So I've got a little bit thinness there, so I'm going to allow some more twist to go in, and that'll thicken up my yarn a little bit. Oh, I've got a really thin place there. That's thinner than what I want, so I'm going to break that. I'm going to rejoin. It's all about learning how quickly to draw back and how quickly to treadle. This is what I was talking about with clamping the yarn between my ring and my middle finger. That way the twist or the pull from the flyer doesn't get up into my fiber. Now I've got too much fiber in that section, so I'm going to pull, and if it's stuck, I need to take out some twists. I'm going to roll it between my fingers, and then that's going to allow me to draft that out. Ideally, once you get going, after 15 minutes or so of long draw spinning, you'll be able to handle those slubs while the wheel is spinning. But I want to show you how you can achieve a better yarn even when you're a little less experienced. There we go. Now I'm getting the right amount of twist. Don't be afraid to untwist with your supporting hand if you feel like you've got a little bit too much twist and it's locking up your fiber supply, pinch the yarn and roll in the opposite direction, and that'll allow you to draft again. All right, it's starting to rain, so I need to move my wheel a little away from the edge of the porch. And I think we'll close there for now. This video is long enough. All right, it's raining a little too hard to be spinning now, but it is so beautiful here in my lovely valley in the mountains of North Carolina. All right, fiber folks, I'm going to have to end it there for today. I wanted to say one thing. I'm trying to buy a second camera for this YouTube channel so that I can get close-ups and look at things at different angles at the same time. If you want to help contribute to that, right below this video, there's something called a super like. You can donate a small amount, like $1 or $2, or up, I think, to like $10 or something like that. That would really help me out. I don't make any ad revenue off of this channel. But your support really means a lot to me. I just love sharing the information. My next video will be about plying with a woolen spun or long draw yarn. So stay tuned for that, and keep spinning and keep dry.